Hello, my name is Richard Shea. I live here in Los Angeles, and I'm here to oppose the project. As stated, I'm asking the Commission to consider Alternative 5. I'm the individual that spearheaded the Historic Cultural Monument application for Times Mirror Square, which historical context and significance of the square is outlined multiple times in the final EIR. So that's just, again, back up. I encourage the Commission to reject the project and consider Alternative 5. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning. My name is John Southern. I'm a licensed architect and faculty at USC here in Los Angeles, and I oppose the project. And I urge you to select Alternative 5, the full preservation alternative, the environmentally superior alternative. And this is because Pierre's work represents a critical chapter in late Southern California modernism and must be preserved so that future generations can learn from his work. The Times Mirror Executive Building is a unique stylistic example of architecture's transition from international style modernism and brutalism to two important historical styles within the 20th century architectural canon. It represents an important shift away from the austere steel and glass structures that were the hallmark of the international style into a more diverse material palette coupled with a more diverse arrangement of formal massings. Please reject the applicant's proposal as designed to demolish this important building so that it can be preserved for future generations to appreciate. And I have an alternative image, which is from Wayne Tom's archive from 1973 when the building was first built. And you'll see that it is a wonderful example of late modernist architecture. And if it was brought back to its full glory, it would be a complement to Pacific Square around City Hall and downtown LA. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, my name is Jay Lorick. I'm a resident of Los Angeles and a former employee of the Times Mirror Company. I'm opposed to the currently proposed project and in favor of Alternative 5, as Richard and John have said. The Times Mirror building and the Times are an integral part of Los Angeles. It's part of our history, and I think the building should be preserved. So I'm in favor of Alternative 5.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name's Harry Chandler. I live 2 blocks away from the proposed building on Broadway, so I come as a resident, but I also come as the ancestor of the Chandler family that built the entire square and then all of its variations. I think the irony here is when Oni says our #1 goal is historic preservation, and then they're willing to tear down the historic building that my father dedicated from William Pereira, makes this a bit of a mockery, because you can't embrace historical preservation and tear down a William Pereira building on the lawn. So I'm much in favor of the Alternative 5. I think Oni's plan can easily accommodate building on top of it. You could even take a bit of the Pereira building off and keep the Paseo, but I think keeping the lobby, keeping the atrium where Dorothy Chandler, my grandmother, planned the music center. There's a lot of history in that building, and I think it would be a shame and a crime to demolish it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Leo Walensky. I'm a Los Angeles resident my entire life. I'm also the former managing editor of the Los Angeles Times. And I'm here to oppose the project as it relates to the executive building and to ask that you select Alternative 5. The building can be remodeled, things can happen to it that preserve it, but to take it down would be wrong. Let me add also, as a journalist who spent more than 30 years in that building, I can assure you that it was a site of events and decisions that had more significance for the development of Los Angeles than just about any other building in the city, and on par with City Hall itself. All of this is laid out in your documents. Also, at this time where the country is divided by serious allegations of corruption, allegations that have touched this project as evidenced by an ongoing FBI investigation, I ask you to stand up for what is right and stand up for the history of this building.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Mickey Jackson. I'm with AHF, Healthy Housing Foundation. Housing is a human right. I also oppose this building, and I urge you to adopt Choice 5, Alternative 5, and I adopt all the preservation arguments that have been made. I want to take a little different, first, I completely agree with preserving the Pereira building. I think it is just ridiculous that we're tearing down our history and that we're so hostile to history. Because I suppose we all hope we'll be part of it. No one will tear us down. These buildings couldn't be more common. They're like tin cans. They're everywhere you look. There's no architectural distinguishing feature. They will add just more common skyscraper money makers. They might as well be a stack of dollar bills. They all look alike, you know, the little variations. They could come out of a kit. Kids could build them as Legos. So they don't, you know, they could at least try to offer an interesting design. But no, it can't be bothered. It might cost a few dollars more. So while I also want to take up the idea of housing, even by the industry standards, if one reads real estate industry, well now blogs, trades, downtown is at a glut of market rate luxury housing. Glut. We're double a glut. Sometimes we're triple a glut. There are vacant, many of the buildings in downtown are up to 25% or more vacant. We need housing, but we don't need more market rate luxury housing to sit vacant and simply be an investment. Where the New York Times did a marvelous series of articles about how a lot of these investments are in fact a form of money laundering because of where the money comes from, and it's called land banking. I'm sure you've all heard of it. So we're land banking, we're building units that in order for them to come out as investment spreadsheet, the rents are going to be impossible for anybody to rent. Everyone who can pay these kind of rents has a place, and they have a choice throughout our city of multiple places because we have such high vacancy. So we're going to build more units to be vacant, while the people who will be on the sidewalk under them will be living in tents. And the only justification I could hope to see for doing something as egregious as tearing down the Pereira building would be if these were 100% affordable. And they're not. And they're going to be vacant. And so you're voting to tear down history, to build this common-looking piece of Lego, to have vacant housing units. There is no benefit for this in the city. We have lots of restaurants. We don't need more. They're all going to just be a copycat of each other. We have nice paseos. We have all of that. It's lovely there in many places. And you're actually bringing blight to this city. If you look up the definition of blight, the kind of vacancy rates and other things that are defined in blight, do you know what this is going to look like in 10 years? Don't vote for blight. Don't vote for housing that's a joke that everyone knows we don't need. Just for a few people, a handful of people who are already fabulously rich to make money while others have to camp out on the sidewalk.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning. My name is Alan Harris, and my wife, Cheryl Younger, are here today filing objections to this project for the legal reasons we will describe. I also am the chair of the Higgins Loft Neighborhood Impact Committee, just a block away from the project site, which is a standing committee of the Higgins Loft Homeowners Association, 135 condominiums strong, and strongly in favor of the position that we espouse. I'm also a union member. I'm a union of stakeholders and informed citizens who care about this city and who have invested our lives and our dollars and our families' future in Los Angeles. This project has serious legal and aesthetic problems which nobody is addressing. I'm advised that my concern that the outsized 53-story and 37-story towers are not significant in terms of consideration under CEQA because 21099 D1 prohibits its consideration of having significant impacts. I've read that statute, and I find the subsequent paragraph to 21099 D1 says the opposite. It says, for the purposes of this subdivision, aesthetic impacts do not include impacts on historical or cultural resources. City Hall, a stone's throw away, is a historic monument of the city of Los Angeles. It's a historical resource. There's also an argument made by the Los Angeles Information File 2452, again, exempting this project from a determination of significant impacts on aesthetic resources. But if you read that section, it further states the opposite. It says, also note that the limitation of aesthetic impacts pursuant to section 21099 of the PRC does not include impacts to historic or cultural resources. Impacts to historic or cultural resources will need to be evaluated pursuant to CEQA regardless of project location. Not only are the obstructed views of City Hall by this construction a substantial negative impact, more importantly, in my opinion, it is the overall architectural impact on the significance of City Hall in its location that creates a negative result. Standing behind me is my neighbor from the Pan American Lofts, Linda Cordero, who has written and is part of the record the following. Those, as well as the historic buildings in the vicinity, would be dwarfed by surrounding high-rises. Why on earth would anyone approve structures that would tower over and diminish the impact of City Hall and the architectural deco gem that is the original LA Times? Why on earth move into the direction of throwing the open space and environs into darkness by creating walled-in streets and city canyons? Even Grand Park was designed in a way that acknowledges City Hall as the geographical heartbeat of the city and its place in the hearts and minds of Los Angelinos. The architectural and planning concept of development that diminishes the aesthetic impact of a building like City Hall can be understood by the following analogy. The Washington Monument in Washington, D.C. stands majestically by itself at 555 feet in the National Mall, devoid of any visual competition. Imagine if a block away, one today would build two glass and steel towers of 53 and 37 stories that would dwarf and denigrate its significance. Is this good city planning? Of course it's not. As it's constituted, City Hall exists at the end of a beautiful mall that begins with the Department of Water and Power at the other end of Grand Park. Its impact, grandeur, and significance would be destroyed by the visual competition of the two taller 53 and 37-story modern glass and steel buildings nearby as proposed by ONI. This is a substantial negative environmental impact to a historic resource which should not be allowed. And it should not be allowed, and I'm strongly behind it, and if I have to go to court to stop this tragedy, I will. Citizens who are here, the Union of Informed Citizens, save City Hall from visual obliteration. I ask you to put your effort together and work to stop this project.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm Cheryl Younger. I live in the Higgins building, and I have a lot of historic background and art background. Okay? So my big concern about this is the civic core. Civic core means buildings that serve the people. Okay? This will be the only residential building stuck in the city core, and it serves no civic purpose. As it was, the LA Times building did serve a civic purpose. It's part of the Fourth Estate, and it's the Fourth Estate that sits as our eyes and ears as citizens to look at the corruption in City Hall, look at the corruption in the planning department, look at who's getting paid off to build something like this, which is obviously does not belong in the civic core. Okay, that's my first point. I'm sorry, the union people always come because it's jobs for them. But you know what? They'll never be able to live in it. They can't afford it. Honestly, they're talking about a luxury building, as, I can't remember your name, but as you said, that luxury building, we are full. And also it says office buildings, and I checked on the office buildings. The office building, occupancy building in downtown is now only like 83% or something. And if the economy turns down, that's going to be 20% vacancy rate in the buildings that are already built, and there are more coming online every day. So we don't need it as an office space, and we do not need it as a high tower, ritzy-ditzy living space. If you're going to put in housing, in my mind, it has to be low-income housing, where the rents are only going to be $1,000 to $3,000. So those people who are in the unions and who build these things can live in them, or else put in what do you call it? A homeless shelter. Do something that contributes to the city if it's going to be housing. But I don't believe it should be housing, because housing does not serve the civic purpose. And we've gone so far. We've gotten all these wonderful buildings. We've got Caltrans. We've got the police administration building. We've got the fabulous new court building. And we have all these other court buildings, administration buildings. We have all of these civic things like the theaters, the opera, everything that's open to the public and serves the public in our civic core. This does not serve the public, and I personally believe that somebody's getting paid off to do it, and that if we had the Fourth Estate down here, we might be able to get at it. When they bought that building, they ran the LA Times out of that building. You know how they did it? They sent the rent skyrocketing. That guy couldn't afford it anymore. So they banished from our civic core the Fourth Estate, and I think that's a real disaster. In that building, we should have a television station, we should have a radio station, and we should have our newspaper back.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to go ahead and use this opportunity to reiterate that your comments should be directed to me and Will, and not to anyone else in the room. Additionally, please keep your comments to the subject matter of the hearing and not anything else. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Eileen Pang, Corporate Counsel for DXI Global Solutions. We are a tenant of the Ani Building. We were there since beginning of 2013 when the LA Times was still in the building. We occupy the second and third floors of the Carrera building, as well as parts of the basement. We are tenants. We have a lease. It continues for several years, and we have an option to renew. Clearly, the presentation made makes no mention of office spaces, and certainly provides no explanation of how current tenants would be accommodated. We were not advised of any of the development plans. We've received no communications from the building regarding it. I only happened upon the scheduling of this meeting. I didn't receive any formal notice provided to me. So, these things obviously raise concerns. We would be displaced if this were to continue. Of course, we have a legal right to stay in the building. But I am very concerned because it does seem like existing obligations are not a high consideration.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning, Alan and William. My name is Sarah Ochoa. I agree with the comments made by Mickey Jackson and Richard Shave. I agree that LA needs more housing, but I don't believe we need more luxury housing. And I oppose the project because under CEQA, the executive building is a recognized historical resource eligible for the California Register for its association with the Times Mirror Company and Otis Chandler, and is a significant example of the work of master architect William L. Carrera. I urge you to select alternative 5, full preservation alternative, the environmentally superior alternative. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Linda Cordero, I live in the Pan American Lofts. First, had a prepared statement, so I was going to have a minute, but I just want to say that that is a really misleading picture. Those buildings are far taller than the federal courthouse, far. So I just want to point that out. And I also want to say a couple things I wasn't planning to say, but I spoke to a friend of mine who's a developer, and she had said to me when we were talking about this project that developers do an awful lot of work and they invest a lot of money. And my response to that was basically, yeah, I respect, that doesn't entitle you to get everything you want. Those are the risks that you take. I also want to point out that I didn't hear anyone, and maybe I missed something, say they actually, that supports this project, say they live downtown. I didn't hear that from anybody who supports the project. I oppose this project as it's proposed, as it's currently proposed. Decades ago, LA made the short-sighted and egregious mistake of razing and neglecting its city center historic buildings, leaving downtown blighted and desolate. By allowing these immense towers to be built in the very heart of the historic core, you will repeat this blunder by failing to thoughtfully develop and preserve what's left. My husband and I are not anti-development, we're not anti-developers, and we're not anti-jobs. But we bought a historic core loft to help bring back life to downtown, not to stop it. But growing doesn't just mean upwards. Okay? Rand Park's design, Alan had quoted me earlier, Rand Park's design deliberately acknowledges and honors City Hall as the city's geographical heartbeat. And there is no reason we can't have lower-rise buildings that would also complement rather than dwarf and diminish the impact of City Hall, the LA Times Art Deco headquarters, and the surrounding historic architecture, both here in on the south side of the project and also Alvera Street. It doesn't just, it's not just right here. I also want to point out that from what I saw in the EIR, the draft EIR, I thought it odd that there was really no mention of the view shed basically from the south side, from where we are. We're not going to see anything. We're just going to see this. That's it. And it's going to throw darkness on our building, our little Pan American. So I guess that's part of the risk we took by buying downtown, but we weren't planning to be basically overrun by stuff like this. We were looking, anyway, I'm not going on about that. The city center, its historic core, its heart, has a unique identity. By throwing up generic towering condos that echo those in other downtown LA neighborhoods, we will lose this essence forever. Development should be done thoughtfully and in service to the city and the community's long-term goals, and not just for the short-sighted benefit and profit of those who don't actually live here. So I guess I'm just saying, please work with us on this. Work with us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Stephen Luftman, I'm a historic preservationist. I support this project with the adoption of alternative number 5. The Pereira building is not only an excellent example of late modern architecture by a master architect, but it also represents the LA Times changing from a reactionary organization to a very progressive organization that endorsed a black mayor, that hired Hispanic reporters. The elimination of this building will eliminate part of our history. I also worry that without the adoption of alternative number 5, you will be opening up the city to financial losses through lawsuits. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Going once. Going twice. Do we have anyone from the council office here? Okay, seeing no one. Okay, so at this time I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period after giving everyone an opportunity to speak, who wishes to speak. This is our opportunity now as a deputy advisory agency to deliberate on the case, comments that are necessary, or address anything that was brought up. Gilby? No. Great. Your street lighting does not have any additional comments. Georgie?
I don't have any additional comment that the modification I made in the deed.
Okay, so I think those are on the record, the, your amended language for the BOE condition, the BOE condition number 3 regarding, that's number 3 regarding the 5-foot public sidewalk, that'll be incorporated by planning staff.
Yes, this is how will show up at the final decision letter. If you shoot that a 5-foot wide public sidewalk, this may be provided along Broadway from the new property line after the street merger area in accordance with downtown street standards.
Great, thank you very much. Now that is officially in the record as well, and will be incorporated in the report, in addition to the other changes that we've made, that we brought up in the hearing regarding the grant clause and condition 21A, where those items of clarification that the applicant had asked for. So given the discussion and the testimony today, including the item that was received this morning, the letter, which I believe what you said was rather lengthy, I'm going to go ahead and take this under advisement for the period of approximately 1 week to give planning staff an opportunity to review that letter. So no action will be taken today on the vesting tentative track map 74761. So I'm taking all aspects of related to the what the advisory agency was considering today under advisement. So that would include the environmental impact report ENV 2016-4676 EIR, the vesting tentative track 74761, and the haul route for the export of up to 364,000 cubic yards of soil. And again, no action was being taken today on the related or the concurrent CPC case. Excuse me. With that, I'm going to go ahead and bring today's hearing to a close. Thank you for your attendance. This concludes the public hearing for this matter. Again, as Will mentioned, the tentative CPC hearing date for the CPC case is scheduled for December 12th, 2019. Thank you for attending. Again, if you do wish for a copy of the determination letter, please sign in on the pink sheets in the back, on the back table there, and leave the pen for us. Thank you.
Pardon me?